Hey everyone, welcome to the Product Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Sean O'Shea, and on the show today we have Andrew Lippert joining us. Andrew is the CTO at McGraw Hill. Andrew, really great having you on the show today. How's everything going?
My pleasure. Doing well, thanks.
So I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and give us some more information about what you, where you are currently in terms of your role and what your company McGraw Hill does.
Certainly. As Sean mentioned, my name is Andrew Lippert. I am the Chief Technology Officer at McGraw Hill, a company that's been around for about 130 years in the educational technology solution space. We are a traditional publisher of educational resources, and as you can imagine, have transitioned from a world where we cut down a lot of trees and shipped a lot of textbooks to one where many of our solutions are predominantly digital in focus at this point. I joined the company about 5.5 years ago as a result of an acquisition. I was working with a small internet startup called Lippert Advanced Learning, which was a spin-out from Stanford University, focused on adaptive and personalized learning experiences in the K-12 math and language arts domains. I've been doing computers since I was a kid, late 70s. Yes, I am that old. My dad bought an Apple II computer back when they were first available. I learned how to program in a variety of languages, sold my first commercial software application as a sophomore in high school, funded my college career, drinking days with consulting around computer technologies, spent 10 years in the Navy as a pilot, and during that time was the computer guy who knew how to make everything, all the printers work, for example. And the last duty station was in Whidbey Island, Washington, where I worked with a bunch of reserve squadron pilots, some of whom were in the internet technologies, and the original internet bubble enticed me to leave the Navy and join a small startup in Seattle. And the rest has been a series of internet companies, inclusive of Intel Corporation and Amazon. I've been involved in about 12 different startups in the course of my career. The last 20 years have been principally focused on educational technology solutions. So I come at it honestly. I have 6 kids. I'm very interested in their education and consequently appreciate my opportunity to contribute to the ecosystem from a technology solution provider in the EdTech space.
Awesome. Great intro. It seems like you've been doing a lot. And also thank you for your service. Really,
well, thank you.
It seems like you've been building software and hardware for years and years now. It's an awesome story to hear.
Yes, thank you. I am old, Sean.
So,
yeah.
And also, it's also interesting to hear that. I love to hear acquisition stories and also acquisitions that end in people staying with the acquirer for some time. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What was that experience like?
Sure. Yeah, it was an interesting evolution. The organization was originally called the Education Program for Gifted Youth, EPGY, at Stanford University, started by Patrick Suppies, who was one of the pioneers in computer-based education and training. There are pictures of him with great big like room-sized computers from the 1950s and a student at a keyboard doing computer-based training. But his pioneering work at Stanford resulted in some pretty impressive adaptive learning capabilities that Stanford began to recognize that they were actually making money selling them, and being a nonprofit organization, that was a little problematic for them. So they brought in an outside investor, spun the organization out, and became Lippert Advanced Learning. And we built the product up and the team up over the course of several years until McGraw Hill came looking. They kicked the tires, recognized the power of the solution, and it fit nicely in a gap in their portfolio. So they made an offer to buy the company. At the time, we were about a $9 to $10 million company on the rise with about 75 employees. The integration of the company was an interesting endeavor. McGraw Hill, being a very big, very traditional publisher, had not done many acquisitions. So there were some pitfalls along the way. a good portion of the leadership of Redbird ultimately wound up leaving for other points. Interestingly, myself and my entire organization remain at McGraw Hill. Everybody that worked for me at Redbird continues to work for me at McGraw Hill, and supports not just the Redbird solution, but a variety of technologies now that are in play in the McGraw Hill ecosystem. But the rest of the Redbird cadre have gone on to other things. Matthew Mugo-Fields, the CEO, is now over at HMH, Houghton Mifflin, running their supplemental division and one of their publishing arms. So the futures have been bright for many of the players that constitute Redbird. And the product continues to this date, supporting hundreds of thousands of students annually in their learning of math and language arts. So it's been a big success story, frankly.
Yeah, I love to hear that. I love to hear when acquisitions end well, especially years later, and especially when the team stays and the culture stays in some capacity. That's awesome. So what does your day-to-day look like now that you're at McGraw Hill?
So for me, my role and responsibility has expanded significantly over the last 5 years. I now lead all of the software engineering, quality engineering, the operational side, the deployment services, and our site reliability engineering practice for McGraw Hill. So I have a team of about 750 or 800 people last I looked, across all of our digital solutions that deliver customer-facing capabilities. And we support, we call it pre-K to gray. So the K-12 market, the higher ed market, colleges, universities, as well as the professional market for things like digital first aid solutions for doctors, aspiring doctors in the professional sphere. We also have an international division, so our breadth is significant. We deliver a tremendous number of services that are foundational and support basics like identity management, content authoring, curriculum delivery solutions, EPUB readers, and then build point solutions and interesting technologies atop that foundation for unique needs of products and services.
Awesome. Great overview. I guess for me, I can only imagine what it's like to have that many people underneath you, and also supporting that many different products. And you brought up one point there is you have products that are across that are global. What's it like to support that many different products across the globe? And also, I'm assuming a lot of these are localized and internationalized. How does that work?
Yeah, it certainly puts the 24 in the 24/7 kind of job description. Being a global organization, we're supporting customers around the planet. We also have team members located completely around the globe as well. I've got folks in Eastern Europe, in Amsterdam, in all the time zones of the US, Canada, throughout South America, in Asia, and in India. So we literally have people all the way around the planet helping to support the solutions in market and the localization that is required to serve the unique needs of places like Spain, Portugal, the Chinese market. Very different aspects. If you think about from a technology perspective, you go into interesting things like from left to right to left character presentation in literal language interpolation, the cultural sensitivities of image choice and replacement imagery, the interesting aspects of numeric notation and the metric system. All of those things wind up playing into our conception of the solutions we build and the technology that supports them. So there's really never a dull moment. There's always something of interest that has to be accounted for in the development of our products and the operation of our solutions.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of right to left text when I asked the question, to be honest. But yeah, from a technology standpoint, I can only imagine. What about content creation? Is that all handled by your team? Well, maybe not the technology team, but by McGraw Hill themselves?
Yeah, we have a varied approach to content development where the McGraw Hill leadership, depending on the product line, may work with a third party who has a particular perspective on a domain, an educational domain, and the way to teach mathematics, for example, or reading acquisition skills, or a renowned published professor in economics, for example, where they might be the source of the curriculum resources from a teaching perspective, the text of the textbook. But then we employ a veritable army of third-party vendors who help us produce the actual physical or digital solution that gets delivered to customers, be it in a physical textbook or the digital EPUB that incorporates interactive widgetry or imagery, videos, audio aspects, the interesting bits from an assessment capability that include things like a virtual version of Excel or a virtual lab experience for your chemistry or biology experiments. All of that stuff is orchestrated by my teams, enabling others to actually do the craft of the content creation itself. So we build all the tooling, all of the supporting infrastructure for creation, storage, management, delivery of the end product, though the actual typing at the keyboard or the illustration may be done by a third party or a subject matter expert that we employ and pay royalties to as a result.
Awesome. That makes sense. And you kind of beat me to my next question, was if you guys are building all of like the piping and plumbing and the CMSs for all this content, but it seems like you are, which is, that's a lot to undertake and update and maintain.
Yeah, it's a unique, at our scale, there's really no off-the-shelf sort of solution that supports the needs of our industry. The multiplicity of experience types, the unique aspects of an electronic health record that needs to be provided as an assessment question. There's no CMS on the planet that has that natively capable. So we wind up having to build a good portion of the capabilities ourselves and then support the scaling of the authoring experience and delivery to multiple millions of students on a daily basis. Or, we're in the 10 to 20 million students a day are using our digital solutions at this point.
It's unbelievable. The scale there, that's great to hear. What is it like? I mean, like really, my mind's going two places, like print to digital, and also like once you got to digital, now as digital has evolved in terms of like cloud solutions and going from like your own data centers to hybrid to then everything maybe on AWS or Google or some other service. Like what have you guys done there over the course of like your time there, I guess, and what you?
Yeah, absolutely. So McGraw Hill is an interesting organization. We were originally part of the McGraw Hill companies, which included things like Standards & Poor's and the Financial Times. So there was a conglomeration. And at that time, physical data centers were the thing. And because it was a financial institution, there was a lot of rigor in the security and management of those solutions. When the conglomerate got split up and McGraw Hill Education went its own way, we took a portion of those data centers along with us. And over the course of the last maybe 7 years, have transitioned predominantly to infrastructure as a service via Amazon's cloud, mostly in a lift to shift. We are just now beginning the second phase of our transition, going from data center-esque operations in the sky to cloud native, and looking at how architecturally we can begin to take advantage of things like serverless technology, the interesting notions around data storage capabilities that are multi-regional and auto-scaling, the various levers that we have available for mobile applications, and exploring things new like AR and VR, beginning to take on the mobile device experience and what it provides natively that you can't get in a text presentation, even if the text is digitized and delivered via a screen. Really looking at how to take the educational experience to the next level and leverage all of the base technologies that are available from companies like Google and Amazon for interesting things like natural language processing. We have a solution that's going to market this fall that allows a classroom of kids with their Chromebooks to read passages and record those passages and automatically score their performance against a known block of text, and then provide to an educator feedback on their students' reading performance. You can imagine a teacher with a classroom of 35 kids trying to do that one-on-one with every student. It's just not possible. With our technology, they'll be able to have a great deal of interactive moments with their student population because of the technology that is now available and can be deployed in service of these educational experiences. So there's a lot of the reimagining going on. We've gone through the print to digitized phase. Now we're going from the digitized to digitally native phase. And it's a really exciting period because you get to take advantage of what the technology really can do for you in unlocking opportunities, as opposed to just reproducing pixel for pixel the picture of a two-fold book onto a screen. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can tell in your voice you're getting really excited about it.
It is the fun part, right?
Especially, I feel like it. AR, VR, they've been out for a while, and I feel like it's great in gaming, but there hasn't been many, like, in my professional opinion, it hasn't. No one's knocked it out of the park yet. I think education is a great space for it, and I think it's going to be good technology to keep children's attention and keep them focused on learning instead of chatting with their friends and doing other things while in class or while at home using one of your products, which is awesome. So, and it's good to hear that a company of your size is already investing in like these latest and greatest and innovative technologies.
One of the challenges for us is not making the technology gratuitous. It's really easy to think of throwing up a 3D avatar or something, but how do you make the experience of an augmented reality moment educationally profound, giving something of power that you just simply couldn't do with any other technology? It's not enough to just use the fancy, cool new thing. It's how do you use it appropriately and teach something in the moment with the technology capability that's unlocked, as opposed to just, this is really cool eye candy.
Yep, for sure. It's fun to use the latest and greatest. The developers love it, I'm sure, and the creatives love it. But yes, it has to actually either provide the same level of, in terms of your metrics, KPIs, in terms of what you're trying to hit for the previous products, if not accelerate them and do better, which is very, very key. You mentioned you're working on an NLP product.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And in my previous life, I did a little bit of work building speech to text or a speech to text product for children. And I think we're a little bit before our time where it was very hard to understand children's speech patterns.
Yes.
And how they speak, just because they're evolving, they're growing, and there's not much it's hard to model against that, which has always been a big problem. But I know some of the big guys are tackling it, and then I know there's some startups out there that have started tackling it as well. So very interesting challenge. Love to hear more about what you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. In this particular case, we're partnering with a company called Soapbox Labs, who has done a great deal of work in the modeling and analysis of the younger generation speech patterns. Because as you point out, their mouths are continuing to grow and evolve. Their control of their tongue means that they speak differently than adults. And being that most of the research in this space is around adult-based speech, it's a lot harder when you try to recognize the voice of a child, especially as they're learning to read, where they may not be actually pronouncing the words on the screen, appropriately. And that's really what you're trying to detect. At the phonemic level, are the students actually able to reproduce the words in spoken form that they see on the screen? So we've got a tremendous partnership with Soapbox. They continue to expand their library, not just of the English spoken word, but also foreign languages. So we've got them working on models for the Spanish language as well, because bilingual ELL type of learning experiences are key to our market. Having the ability to have a English as a second language speaker and do the appropriate natural language processing of their voices, yet another hurdle in this mix. So one of the things that we are working closely with them is not just the modeling and the sample set, but also their scaling. They're a fairly small company. We're obviously not. And when we take the solutions to market, we need to have them able to process in near real time the results of the recorded audio tracks so that we can give immediate feedback and redirect classroom instruction as a result. This is really about closing that loop between an evaluation or assessment of a student's capability and the educator's opportunity to intervene and affect an outcome, help them understand where they have done well, where they need to work, so that they can improve their skill set. The complexity is multivariate, and it makes it really kind of cool to work closely with this field, because it gets all the way down to microphone technology and the Chromebook and the bandwidth available in the classroom to get these sample sets out at high enough fidelity that the models work appropriately. And when you got 35 kids on Chromebooks with a crappy Wi-Fi system and an antique classroom, those are challenges that you've got to anticipate and overcome, in addition to the really cool, sexy stuff around the machine learned models for the voice recognition patterns.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just thinking about the solution in my head, there's so many different checks and balances there that while developing, you're not dealing with. You got to really test them in the field. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a whole nother beast for sure. But really, really interesting. And I think the key point that you mentioned is really, if there is any latency, it's going to hurt the product.
It is.
So really, really cutting down as much as possible there.
Yeah, I mean, you think about a classroom; it's not a quiet environment.
To my other point, I think when educating children, no, not at all. So you have to filter out the background noise. There's so much to it, and there's only so much you can do on the Chromebook itself versus in the cloud. Yep. So it's just very, very interesting problem you guys are really solving here. So I'm excited to see the final product.
Happy to show it to you
later this year. Yeah. So I guess any other relevant newer innovative technologies or even old school technologies that you're road mapping for the future, like on the tech side or product side?
Yeah, on the product side, one of the things that the interesting thing about this particular market is that technology and access to devices with proper connectivity is only now actually becoming holistic and available. It's taken us a number of decades, fits and starts, to get to the point where the capabilities in the classroom are ubiquitous, and you can actually expect that somebody has access to a device that can be used for digital delivery. And much of that is now mobile. So we're spending a good deal of time with phone type, tablet type interfaces, and what the next generation of educational learning moment can be with mobile native technologies. It's different than just the browser on the web page, right? And having the opportunity to make something much more richly interactive, and as previously mentioned, educationally appropriate. So it's not just a gratuitous use of the capability, but bringing to life the learning experience in new and unique ways, and leveraging community. So looking at, for example, the seasons and how leaves change. We've got a project where we've started mobile device collection of photographs across the U.S. at different points in time in the fall to show how trees change colors across the US, and crowdsourcing that using mobile device technology. I got a camera right here. I can go out in the field, take a picture of my local tree, and see at scale how chlorophyll changes the color of the leaves and trees across the nation. It's a really cool native use of the technology, applied appropriately to an educationally relevant learning moment at scale, and using a crowdsourced kind of perspective to get people excited about and interested in science and technology learning. So it's really a virtuous cycle of application of new cool capabilities in an environment that gets us the next order of magnitude on student outcomes, student interest, and their engagement.
Yeah, really creative approach there. So a lot of times we generally think about the end product, but you're talking about really crowdsourcing to get more content to then provide the actual end product or end content, which is awesome. It makes the content creator's life easier, your life easier from the tech side.
Yeah, and
so that's awesome.
It breaks down the barriers of the classroom and really expands the learning environment to be something that's not just you and your teacher inside these four walls. You've now got the rest of society and the rest of the global ecosystem to explore as your classroom.
Yeah, exactly. And just leveraging them based on their capabilities and what they can do. That's very smart. One question that came up as you were speaking before is how do you approach like building technology for different areas? So in the US, we have generally good Wi-Fi, 5G, LTE, et cetera. But then you have in emerging markets, you have lower bandwidth. They don't have unlimited data. They have lower end Android phones. What's the approach there? Are you using the same core mobile apps and core backend technologies, or do you have like a light version?
Yeah, it's a good question. Most of our solutions currently are web-based and require that always-on connection to the internet. We've deployed mobile applications that allow to download and locally play and then sync experiences, but we have not yet really done a great deal in looking at the micro market where the school building may be completely isolated and needs a local instance of the learning experiences deployed so that connectivity no longer becomes an issue at all, where the device type may jump straight over anything resembling a desktop or a laptop and directly to that small screen experience. And how do we get that into the hands of the emerging nations and markets that are underserved, frankly, currently, from a digital education experience perspective? That's on our horizon. We've got a ton of problems to solve with our current market, so we haven't really started to dig in much. But if you think about countries like China, they have a literal impossible problem. Their population is growing far more quickly than their ability to produce teachers. So they, of necessity, are needing to go to a digital first educational solution and have the distributed delivery of educational experiences at their core. So we're working closely to enable that kind of thinking more globally. And how do you leverage the power of an educator at scale? So it's no longer just 1 to 20, 1 to 25, 1 to 30, but 1 to 2,000, 1 to 5,000. How do you really enable the learning experiences to be of quality and produce the same sort of outcomes with a totally different paradigm from an educational environment perspective?
Yeah, we're really going back to kind of what you said before. The technology caught up, and now for some areas it hasn't caught up fully. And then these are brand new challenges. I can't imagine thinking of how to distribute content for 1 to 1,000 and make that's a brand new experience. You're building something brand new that no one's ever really done before. in terms of the educational realm that I know of. So it's really, really unbelievable. I guess going deeper into, I guess, yourself, I guess what, besides McGraw Hill or including McGraw Hill, what's been your most memorable moment of your career so far?
Oh, that's a wild question.
I know this.
Yeah, there was the day that I accidentally deleted 3 weeks worth of content development work. That was a tough day. I had to go into a room of my content development team and confess that I didn't have a backup and there was no way to get it back. And they were just, it was my boneheaded maneuver that ultimately had them having to redo 3 solid weeks of work in anticipation of a near-term launch. So it was not a pretty day. On the flip side, I think getting Redbird Advanced Learning to market was a really powerful adventure. We had a small team, short timelines, limited funding, but built everything the right way so that we crafted 12 years worth of curriculum experiences in 18 months for $3 million. I don't know of any company that's done something as fantastic as that in the EdTech market, given where we were. Now we had a good foundation with the stuff that the EPGY program and Stanford had produced, but this really was a complete overhaul and rewrite of everything that had come before with a new stack as well. So it was a pretty impressive effort that produced spectacular results in the end. So I got to tell, that's probably my most proud moment. My personal example of the best code I've ever written. So let's not say best code because the quality of the code was suffering, but the experience was pretty slick. When I was at Apex Learning, I had my chance to write a great book and really took a different spin on it, delivering kind of a master control panel for an educator that allowed them to not only record grades and scores for students' work, but manipulate the curriculum experience as well, turning things on and off, hiding things, delaying things, setting due dates, doing a global override on things, and have it all built within one simple control panel-esque sort of thing. It looked like a grade book, but it had all sorts of fun and extra experiences to it. And that was probably one of the most comprehensive pieces of code that I was personally responsible for which I'm pretty proud. It was pretty slick. They took them 14 years to replace it. So that was pretty good.
Wow. Wow. I think there's something about building something yourself and coding it and just being able to see it work and have other people utilizing it. That's just like this.
It's very rewarding.
That like it's hard to explain, but I totally get it. Do you personally still code yourself day to day?
So I do enjoy
your free time
taking a look at PRs, pull requests, and reviewing other people's code. I have very few opportunities these days. I get to write an occasional SQL query. I dabble around. We have New Relic instrumentation of our ecosystem, so I'll write some scripty stuff and some code there to show dashboards and things. But my opportunity to actually deliver custom code for production solutions that are customer facing is about that big these days. Much to my chagrin, I miss those days. But it is a skill that you've got to really maintain. And my time is unfortunately distracted by many other things at this point, so I don't get to play as much.
Yep, but I mean, I think what you're doing is you're accelerating a lot more. So I think it's worthwhile for what you're doing now and makes sense. So that's good to hear though. But I talked to a lot of technologists that are a mix of like business and tech now. I mean, what as a CTO, you kind of bounce between the two and product. And a lot tend to, I would say 9 out of 10 say they do miss coding somewhat day to day. And me personally, I don't code day to day anymore, but it's, as you said, it's like I'm a native iOS developer by trade, but we're on Swift 5.7 now, and it's so hard to pay, like so hard to retain and keep up.
Yeah, not to mention all the APIs for the device. So it's like constant chasing your tail.
Yep. But you got to know enough high level. As long as you know enough high level, you can, and you have the right people behind you that can go lower level and help you. That's the key. And I'm assuming that's what you have especially with a team of 700 people.
We have a very strong team, and my lieutenants are all exceptional. It's a lovely environment of collaboration and expertise where we get an opportunity to really kind of push the envelope and deliver cool stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's amazing as an educational company, being able to push the envelope and having that as part of your like initiative and values. That's great. I guess what are some of the challenges that you guys face when trying to, I guess, be super innovative and being your size? Like it's always I feel like it's a lot of startups say they're super innovative, they can pivot so quickly and easily, but large companies tend to have the kind of mantra that it's pretty hard to because they're so large. But do you have that feeling, or do you guys feel like you can?
Yeah, there are a variety of constraints.
Try the next greatest thing.
Yeah, many of them are financial. We are owned by private equity, and they have direct interest in how the dollars are spent in their investment, obviously. So being capacity constrained, there's always more that we would love to do or we don't necessarily get the opportunity to do. The biggest advantage we have, given our scale, is the breadth and depth of the curriculum opportunities, the learning moments that we can address. Your typical startup, it's very, very hard in the EdTech industry to get to the level of capability and content quality to break into this industry. It's a very, very challenging nut to crack. You've seen organizations that have tried just the technology-centric approach, like Newton, for example, which was going to be like IBM Watson for education, where it would figure out student performance and recommend the next best experience based on machine learning models and input data from all sorts of sources. So they built this big brain, but then there was no input and no output because of the way the ecosystem works. The various curriculum experiences are divided amongst dozens and dozens of curriculum providers, none of whom really wanted to share their outcome data with Newton. And even if they did, the Newton recommendation had to be something that the students had access to. So if they only had access to one thing that wasn't recommendable by Newton, it failed. So it's a really challenging industry from that respect, where you've got to kind of bring both. You've got to have the technology and the capabilities as well as the curriculum experiences and the diversity and richness of them, so that the two can play well. One of the things that I've always said, personalizing a learning experience is not about the technology. It's about what you can personalize and deliver. If you've only got one way to teach 2 + 2, and the student's struggling with that conceptually, you can get the recommendation to say, give them more. But if you've only got the same thing and you're turning it up louder and louder, it's like Spinal Tap. It goes to 11, but it doesn't actually add any value to the student unless you've got different ways to present conceptually how to learn how to add 2 + 2. You miss the concept. You can build the technology, but you got to have the content to go along with it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. When it kind of relates to when, like, in my past life, when we were building our product, the biggest thing was you can't build you can't reference a search engine. You can't use an open source API to pull all this data. It needs to be we called it like a walled garden. You need content that is relevant for the age groups, and it needs to be checked by the experts to make sure it's appropriate and relevant and correct. So that was always a huge challenge. So I guess that brings me to one more question for you regarding the content and in general. What does your staff look like in terms of like technologists versus like anyone on the content side? Is it like completely like what's the percentage of like, is it 1 to 2, 1 to 5?
It's an interesting question. So I would suspect that McGraw Hill full-time employees, it's about 5 technologists to 1 curriculum specialist. But the curriculum individual is orchestrating an army. They've got a tremendous number of third-party vendors, somebody doing illustrations, somebody doing audio, video, configuring widgets, writing actual content, the words on a page, figuring out what the scope and sequence should look like, mapping the material to standards and understanding how the pieces should go together, building the structure of the courseware itself. So we do a lot of leverage of vendors that are experts in assisting with that stuff, as well as our subject matter experts who, some of whom are internal, but many of whom are external to the organization, especially in the higher ed space, where it's the expert published professor. McConnell, for example, is the go-to guy for our economics programs in higher ed, and he's the expert who understands how economics works and how to teach it. He's written the textbooks, and we are the deliverer of that technology and the product solution as a result. So and it gives us the opportunity to ebb and flow. So as a new product comes on, we can add people to that. As it gets delivered to market, they draw back down. So it's a very dynamic kind of relationship. The tools are all there, and the learning moments get created as appropriate for the products as they go to market.
Great. That makes perfect sense. I can imagine you have to scale up and down depending on the complexity and what's needed in terms of like illustrations and video and 2D, 3D, et cetera. I can only imagine. That's great to hear, though. I'm going to come back to you with another, probably a big one for you that you're going to have to think on. But what advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self. I just got back from Florida with my family last night, actually. I'd probably tell my younger self to take a few more of those moments. I've always been a workaholic. I have no problem with the 24/7, 365 job description, but there are tremendous value and benefits to giving your brain some downtime and letting your subconscious think through problems and your conscious brain step back for a bit and see contextually what the big picture is and look at the landscape. It's dangerous to get scope locked on a particular problem for too long before you are able to step back and see in context, in society, in the ecosystem, in the shoes of your user, what is it that we're really talking about and how are we looking to build these capabilities and solutions? The holistic aspect to this is really the important one, especially for technologists. We have a tendency to forget about the implementation specialists, the training materials, the marketing team, the sales organization, and how they're going to be able to talk about our capabilities in ways that make sense and entice customers to buy. That's an important perspective to bring to bear as a technologist, as somebody building software solutions, because it's actually what makes them successful. It's not the code, it's everything else that's so much more important.
Great response. It seems like you're really doing everything you can to prevent like bubbles within your organization to make sure all the different parties are connecting, which is key. And I totally agree. Sometimes you get in the weeds, or each team can get in the weeds and just like not come up for air sometimes. So I totally get it. And personally, I've been doing the same, take a break or even work from a remote location now with our new way of working and being able to work from kind of anywhere. And it seems like you got to have that structure. for your team. I guess how has that been for you guys as a company? Like where did you have?
We have some offices; they're all getting smaller.
What's your
and we've embraced hybrid. We're now we're no longer hiring with any geographic restriction, literally. So I've got our legal teams regularly looking at employment law in new countries, much to their chagrin. We just added Brazil and Uruguay and Peru in the last couple of weeks. Had them looking at Belarus yesterday, and you can imagine that's a bit dicey with the situation in Ukraine. But we've shut down offices in Santa Monica, San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston over the pandemic period. So moving to embracing the complete hybrid model, which presents its own challenges, right? Getting people interacting and collaborating well when they may never actually sit in the same room can be interesting and challenging. You imagine all the fun you've had at a whiteboard and conversations and brainstorming sessions. That's a lot harder to do in the virtual space, regardless of how much Zoom wants to play up their whiteboard capability. It's just not the same, right? So we're doing things like identifying opportunities to bring team leads together physically to do some of those sessions together and rebuild some of the collaborative capabilities that you kind of lose out on when you go full hybrid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like everything's a balance, and you have to balance even this. So I know a lot of companies are doing like retreats, and they're doing anything to, I guess, let people disconnect in some capacity, because working at home can cause you to work more and not as efficient. So it's just different new challenges, but I think I personally think it's for the better. It's going to help. It's helping people live like better lives, and
absolutely
don't have to spend hours commuting from I'm talking from personal experience going back and forth from New York City for a long extended period of time. But yeah, that's awesome. That's really good to hear the direction you guys are going. And I can only imagine what legal is doing to you and how frustrated they could be. But that is how it is. So we're coming to the end of our conversation, and we covered a lot of information and topics today. To bring things together, we love to end our episodes with what we call a Majestyk Byte, which is one of our key takeaways that you'd like to leave with our listeners today. What can you share with us regarding your Majestyk Byte?
I really think it is about technologists really understanding the power of technology, pragmatically solving real problems, and not just getting stuck in the trap of technology for technology's sake. This isn't about the cool experience because it's eye candy. It is literally about how are you solving problems? How are you making people more efficient? How are you using technology as transparently as possible so that it doesn't get in the way or interfere with inducing cognitive load in unusual and unsparing ways, so that human beings actually take advantage of what it is we build and do with technology to make lives more effective, more efficient, to produce outcomes better, stronger, faster. Sometimes we get enamored of the latest and greatest, the new library, the sexy graphic engine, but that's not really the point. It's what does the technology provide that's new, unique, and not capable of being done other ways. It's hard for sometimes those of us in the tech field to make that leap and get out of our own way and really understand the problems that we're solving for the people that need them.
Yeah, a great response. I mean, I think that's that's a big problem as technologists. You want to use the fun, cool, new, flashy library or framework that's out there, but if it's going to complicate the UX or user experience, it may not be the best solution, but maybe it will be in the future. Well, Andrew, it's been great chatting with you. Where can people go to find out more about
mheducation.com is the homepage for the corporation. It's spelled just like it sounds. And I can be found on LinkedIn. Please reach out and connect.